What if everything you've been told about the Pope was a lie? Imagine this. The man who holds the fate of billions in his hands, the spiritual leader of the Catholic world. What if, at the height of his papacy, he did something that no one expected? Something so out of character, so shocking that it sent shockwaves through the Vatican and the entire world. Pope Leo XIV, a figure of divine authority, took a 6-week vacation, or 6-week escape, from the very duties that defined his existence. While the world watched, he abandoned his post, his people, and the weight of his sacred responsibility. And the question is, why? What could have driven a man of such faith, such power, to leave everything behind and vanish into the peaceful isolation of Castel Gandolfo? Why was this simple act, an act so human, so ordinary, met with such outrage? What was so dangerous about that 6-week break that shook the Church to its core? What was hidden? The Vatican's silence was deafening, the faithful perplexed, and even those closest to him stunned by the audacity of it all. But deep down, something tells me there was more to this than a mere vacation, something dark, something that the Church never wanted you to know. Why did Pope Leo XIV's 6-week vacation to Castel Gandolfo shock the world? This is not just about a man taking a break. This is about uncovering the secrets that lay hidden beneath that serene retreat. The question is, will you dare to know the truth? Like and subscribe if you're ready to dive deep into this untold story. And don't forget to tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. Trust me, you're about to find out what they never wanted you to hear. Pope Leo XIV, a man who stood as a pillar of tradition, a man who carried the weight of centuries of faith on his shoulders, the supreme leader of the Catholic Church, its voice, its authority, its guiding light, a man who was expected to embody not just spiritual authority, but the very strength of the Church itself, to lead with unwavering conviction, to stand tall in the face of crisis, to shepherd his people through the storms of an ever-changing world. Yet, in the midst of this sacred responsibility, something changed, something that no one could have anticipated. The Pope, who was sworn to lead, to never falter, to never show weakness, made the unthinkable decision to leave it all behind. For 6 weeks, 6 weeks away from the people who looked to him for guidance, from the world that depended on his words. 6 weeks in the solitude of Castel Gandolfo, far from the crowded halls of the Vatican, far from the faithful in Rome. Think about that. A pope, the highest figure in the Catholic Church, abandoned his post during one of the most turbulent times in modern history. The world was changing. The Church was at a crossroads. And in the middle of it all, Pope Leo XIV chose to step away. Why? What was so pressing, so urgent, that it required him to walk away from the very thing he was sworn to protect? Was it a moment of divine reflection? A search for spiritual clarity? Or was it something deeper? Something the Vatican doesn't want you to know? Consider the context. The Church, struggling with the rapid changes in the world, political upheavals, the rise of secularism, and the questioning of authority that threatened its foundation. It was a time when the very fabric of faith was being tested. And here, in the midst of all that, Pope Leo XIV made a decision that broke from tradition. He left Rome. And while the world continued to spin, with chaos and uncertainty surrounding the Church, Pope Leo XIV's absence only added to the tension. He was not just any pope. He was a figurehead, a symbol of stability for millions. His absence, his choice to step back from the responsibility placed upon him, could not be seen as anything less than a break, a defiance even. So why would he do it? A man who had always been bound by duty, a man whose very life had been dedicated to service, suddenly stepped away. Was he in fact reflecting, seeking divine guidance to answer the questions of the Church's future? Or was there something more? Something hidden in his decision to retreat, to walk away from the expectations placed on him as the spiritual leader of the world? What could he have discovered in that time away? The absence wasn't just an inconvenience to the faithful. It was a break from the norms, a break that raised more questions than answers. And in the quiet, reflective halls of Castel Gandolfo, away from the public eye, away from the press, away from the weight of his papacy, Pope Leo XIV had time to confront what he truly believed. Time to step away from the ever-watchful eyes of the Vatican. Time to ask himself questions that no one had dared ask him before. Was this a moment of divine inspiration? Or was this the moment where the Pope found himself at the crossroads between tradition and truth? His 6-week absence wasn't just a vacation. It wasn't just a simple escape. No, this was a critical, pivotal moment in the history of the Church, a moment that no one, not even the Vatican, could afford to ignore. It wasn't just about him taking a break from the burden of leadership. It was about what he was running from and what he was seeking in the silence of that retreat. As the world watched and wondered, Pope Leo XIV's retreat became not just a moment in time, but a symbol of a man facing the unthinkable, a symbol of a church at a turning point, and perhaps most importantly, it became a symbol of a truth that was too dangerous for the Vatican to embrace. So I ask you again, why did Pope Leo XIII's 6-week vacation to Castel Gandolfo shock the world? What was he really doing there? What did he find? And why did the Vatican, your Vatican, do everything in its power to keep that story buried? We may never know the full truth, but one thing is certain. The Pope's decision to step away from the responsibilities that were his by divine right leaves us with more questions than answers. And for the first time in history, we are forced to confront the uncomfortable reality that even those who lead the faithful may be searching for something more, something hidden from view. It's a truth that for centuries the Church has been too afraid to face. But now, the veil is starting to lift, and the question remains, what did Pope Leo XIV discover in the shadows of Castel Gandolfo? What truths did he uncover, and why were they so dangerous that they could not be shared with the world? The answers lie in that 6-week retreat. The answers lie in the silence that followed. And now, the world may finally be ready to hear them. Now, let's think for a moment. Imagine you're in Pope Leo XIV's shoes. You are the head of the largest, most powerful institution in the world. Every decision you make ripples across millions of lives. Every move you make is scrutinized by the masses, the faithful, and the enemies of the Church alike. The weight of that responsibility, it's almost unimaginable. But then, in the midst of this pressure, when everything is teetering on the edge, you step away. You leave it all behind. The faithful are left wondering, why would the Pope abandon his post? Why would he leave Rome during a time of unrest, a time when his leadership is most needed? For 6 weeks, the Pope, who represents God's voice on earth, the Holy Father, goes silent. The papacy, a symbol of divine authority, suddenly goes quiet. And the world watches in confusion and disbelief as their leader retreats to the calm of Castel Gandolfo. Now, what if I told you this wasn't just a simple vacation? What if this 6-week absence was about far more than rest? What if Pope Leo XIV had to confront something he couldn't face in the Vatican? Something that could unravel the very foundations of the Church? What if his decision to leave was a deliberate act, a necessary one, that held a secret too dangerous for the public eye? There are whispers, of course. Whispers that the Pope's retreat was more than just a physical escape. That behind the closed doors of Castel Gandolfo, he was investigating, perhaps even uncovering, hidden truths about the Church's past. Secrets long buried, knowledge suppressed for centuries. What if he found something that forced him to question everything he'd been taught, everything he had believed, everything that defined the Church's authority? What if, while the world was distracted by his absence, Pope Leo XIV discovered a truth so uncomfortable, so far-reaching, that it was better kept hidden? The kind of truth that could change the course of history. A truth that would shake the very core of the Catholic Church and the faith it represents. What did the Pope find? Did Pope Leo XIV find ancient documents, lost gospels, or even evidence of a darker past hidden from the faithful? Was he searching for answers to questions no one else dared ask? Was he uncovering secrets about the origins of the Church? Or perhaps, was he grappling with the future of the Church, trying to determine whether it could survive the coming storm of modernity and secularism? We'll never know for sure, because when the Pope returned, he didn't speak of what transpired during those 6 weeks. He didn't tell the world what he had uncovered or what had led him to that moment of reflection. Instead, he stepped back into his role as the Pope, his face a mask of serenity, and continued with his duties, as if nothing had changed. But we, the curious ones, are left to wonder. The questions remain unanswered. The truth lies buried in the silence of those 6 weeks. And the Vatican? The Vatican will do everything it can to ensure those secrets stay hidden. The last thing they want is for the world to learn what Pope Leo XIV discovered, what he uncovered during his time away from the world's watchful eyes. Was this a man searching for redemption? A man trying to understand his place in a world that was changing faster than the Church could keep up? Or was this Pope, this figure of unwavering faith, being led to a truth so inconvenient that it was better left in the shadows? Imagine the weight of that revelation. Imagine the courage it would take to return to the papacy after discovering something that could alter the course of Christianity forever. The Pope's return was not just a return to duty, it was a return to a reality he could never escape. But what about the truths he uncovered in his absence? What about the things he learned during his escape from the Vatican? We will never know for sure. The Vatican will ensure that. But the absence itself, the way Pope Leo XIV stepped away during a time of immense pressure, during a period where his leadership was needed more than ever, that absence is the clue. It's the key to understanding what might have happened during those 6 weeks. And now, more than ever, it's up to you to decide. What was the Pope truly searching for? What was he running from? Was this an escape for personal reflection? Or was it an uncovering of a truth so profound, so dangerous, that the world was never meant to know? Now think about it for a second. A 6-week absence, that's more than just a break. That's time. Time to think, time to reflect, time to see things with fresh eyes, away from the pressures, away from the endless stream of demands. A man in Pope Leo XIV's position doesn't just take time off because he's tired. No, this was something different. Something much more profound. Picture the weight of the world on his shoulders. The Vatican, its riches, its power, its responsibility. The world's faithful looking to him for guidance, for leadership. His every word, his every decision shaping the course of millions of lives. A burden like that can break even the strongest of men. But in the face of all this, Pope Leo XIV made a decision to walk away. For 6 weeks, he was not the Pope. He was not the voice of God on earth. He was just a man in search of something, a man searching for answers. But the question is, what answers was he searching for? What could have possibly led a man of such unshakable faith to abandon his post at such a pivotal moment? Was this just a time for contemplation, for spiritual renewal? Or did the Pope need to see something hidden from public view, to make sense of the Church's future? Did he need to discover a hidden truth about the Church's origins, its secrets, the things that have been kept locked away for centuries? As the Pope withdrew into the seclusion of Castel Gandolfo, away from the prying eyes of the media, the faithful, and even his own advisors, he was left alone with his thoughts, alone with his fears, his doubts, and perhaps with the knowledge that the world he was leading was changing. Could he have seen the cracks in the foundation? Could he have sensed that the Vatican's power, its unquestioned authority, was beginning to wane? For 6 weeks, he had the time to confront that reality, to explore ideas, to read, to learn, to dig deeper into the mysteries of the Church, to open ancient texts, to reflect on the true meaning of his papacy, his role in this world, and perhaps the future of faith itself. What did Pope Leo XIV find? Did he discover ancient writings that challenged the very foundations of Christianity? Was there something in the lost Gospels, the apocryphal texts, or even the forgotten history of the early Church that made him question everything he had been taught? You see, for centuries, the Vatican has carefully guarded its secrets. The Church's history is filled with hidden knowledge, suppressed documents, and stories that never made it into the official narrative. Could Pope Leo XIV, during his time in Castel Gandolfo, have uncovered something the Vatican didn't want you to know? Something that would shake the very beliefs upon which the Church was built? Could he have come across suppressed truths about the origins of Christianity, about the early Church's struggles, or about the true nature of faith? Could the Church's story be far different from what we've been told? And if he did find something that powerful, something that dangerous, what would he do with it? Would he bring it to light? Or would he, like so many before him, keep it hidden, protecting the Church's sacred image at all costs? In the quiet of Castel Gandolfo, Pope Leo XIV had the time to ask those questions, the time to explore the deepest corners of his faith, the time to confront the uncomfortable truths that the Church has been trying to suppress for centuries. So, I ask you, what would you do if you were in his shoes? Would you walk away from the truth if it meant shaking the foundations of everything you believed in? Would you confront the uncomfortable, the inconvenient truths, even if it meant risking everything? You see, Pope Leo XIV's 6-week absence wasn't just about taking a break. It was about the search for something deeper, something hidden, something that, if revealed, could change the way we see the Church, the Pope, and perhaps even the very nature of faith itself. Now, as we sit here, the questions remain. What did he uncover? What did he learn that was so powerful, so transformative, that the Vatican would go to great lengths to keep it hidden? The silence of those 6 weeks speaks volumes. And though the Vatican may try to keep the truth locked away, the question still lingers in the air. What did Pope Leo XIV discover that could shake the Church to its core? As you sit with that thought for a moment, let it settle in. The very silence of Pope Leo XIV's retreat was enough to make the world pause and wonder. 6 weeks of silence, 6 weeks where the world was left without his guidance, without his authoritative voice. And in that silence, the questions grew louder. What was he hiding from us? What was he running from, or perhaps running towards? This wasn't just a physical absence. No, this was a symbolic absence. Pope Leo XIV wasn't just stepping away from the daily duties of the papacy. He was stepping away from the weight of tradition itself. The very structure of the Church, built over centuries, was now at risk. Was this a chance for him to find clarity, or was he realizing something about the Church that could not be ignored? Think about the time he spent away. It wasn't just about rest. It wasn't just about self-reflection. The Pope, someone with access to the deepest, most guarded secrets of the Church, had time, perhaps for the first time in his life, to truly question the narrative that had been told for centuries. Could it be that he saw cracks in the foundation of the Church's doctrine? Maybe he found that things weren't as they seemed. Perhaps in his solitude, Pope Leo XIV stumbled upon something that would change the way we understand Christianity, the papacy, and the origins of our faith. A lost text, a forbidden story, an ancient prophecy that had been hidden from the world. For centuries, the Vatican has had a tight grip on knowledge. Texts were buried, stories suppressed, inconvenient truths erased from history. What if in his retreat Pope Leo XIV discovered one of those truths? What if he found a lost chapter of the Church's story, something that could shatter the carefully curated image the Vatican has built? What would he do with that information? Would he have the courage to bring it to light, to challenge centuries of established tradition, to open the doors of the Vatican to truths long hidden? Or would he, like so many before him, choose to protect the sacred institution, keeping the truth locked away for the sake of stability, for the sake of the faithful who may not be ready for it? But think deeper. If Pope Leo XIV had discovered something that monumental, something that could change the course of history, would the Church have allowed him to bring it to light? Would the Vatican have embraced it? Or would they have fought to keep it buried? These are the questions we must ask ourselves. The silence, The absence of those 6 weeks wasn't just a moment for Pope Leo XIV to take a break. It was a moment for him to find something. And what he found, we may never fully know. The Vatican's silence around those 6 weeks, their reluctance to speak about it, speaks volumes. What if Pope Leo XIV uncovered a truth that was simply too dangerous to reveal? We can only speculate, of course. The official story will remain the same. The Vatican will continue to portray the Pope's retreat as a simple vacation, a break from the stresses of his papacy. But in the quiet corners of Castel Gandolfo, where he was free from the prying eyes of the world, what could he have possibly discovered that would warrant such secrecy? Now more than ever, we must question the narrative. The story we've been told is full of holes, full of gaps that no one dares to fill. What if those gaps are the real story? What if what Pope Leo XIV uncovered in his 6 weeks of seclusion was the key to understanding not just the past of the Church, but its future? What if, in that brief absence, the Pope realized the Church's future was hanging by a thread? Maybe it was a thread he wasn't willing to cut. Maybe it was a truth he wasn't ready to face. Or perhaps, just perhaps, he was waiting for the world to be ready to hear it. And so we sit here, left with a trail of unanswered questions. The Vatican remains silent. The faithful move on. But the mystery of those 6 weeks lingers in the air, waiting to be uncovered. And maybe, just maybe, the truth about what Pope Leo XIV discovered is one we'll never fully know. But what if we're only scratching the surface? As the days passed and Pope Leo XIV returned to his duties, the world seemed to carry on as if nothing had changed. But deep down you could feel it, the quiet aftershock. His absence had left a void, one that no papal decree or sermon could fill. And the Vatican, as powerful as it was, couldn't silence the whispers. The questions were too loud, too persistent. Why didn't the Pope ever speak about those 6 weeks? Why didn't he share what he found, what he learned, what he had uncovered? The Church could have used this moment to bring clarity to its followers, to usher in a new era of truth. But instead, the silence only deepened the mystery. What was so powerful that it couldn't be discussed in public? Was it a forbidden truth that would tear apart centuries of tradition? Was it an idea, a discovery, a revelation that could shatter the foundations of the Vatican's authority? Or was it something so controversial, so dangerous, that the Vatican would rather let the question linger unanswered than risk exposing it? Think about it. How often has the Church, throughout history, gone to extreme lengths to protect its image? How often have they hidden the truth, buried inconvenient facts, erased inconvenient histories, all in the name of protecting the faithful? In a world where power and control are tightly bound to knowledge, Pope Leo XIV's 6-week escape wasn't just a break. It was an opportunity to see things for what they truly are. And when he returned to the Vatican, he came back not with answers, but with more questions. He came back with a weight on his shoulders. He came back with the knowledge that the world was changing, and that the Church was perhaps no longer the unshakable force it once was. What he discovered, we may never know. But the very fact that he didn't share it with the world speaks volumes. Pope Leo XIV may have returned to his papal duties, but something had shifted within him. Was it a realization that the Church's future lay in uncharted waters? Or was it an awakening to the fact that perhaps the answers to the questions the Church had been avoiding were out there, just waiting to be found? You see, it's one thing to be the Pope. It's another to be the Pope of truth. And maybe, just maybe, Pope Leo XIV realized that the truth, no matter how uncomfortable, can't be ignored forever. No matter how many secrets are kept buried, the truth has a way of emerging. The questions he asked during those 6 weeks will continue to haunt the Church whether they're answered or not. There is an undeniable weight to silence. The Pope's decision to stay quiet about what happened during his retreat wasn't just a personal choice. It was a statement in itself. It was a declaration that the answers to the Church's most pressing mysteries are out there, and that one man, even a pope, might not have the power to change everything. So, what is it that Pope Leo XIV discovered in the quiet solitude of Castel Gandolfo? We can only imagine. But one thing is certain. The Vatican has always been a place of power, of control, of truth, but also of secrets. And when one of the most powerful men in the world steps away for 6 weeks, the world has the right to wonder, to ask, what truths lie hidden behind the walls of the Vatican? What did Pope Leo XIV uncover, and why was it too dangerous for the world to know? I may not have the answers today, but I know one thing for sure. The search for truth is never easy, and as long as we continue to question, as long as we continue to seek the truth, we will uncover what has been hidden. And that, my friends, is the real power. The power to search for the truth, to ask the difficult questions, and to never stop until we find the answers. Like and subscribe if you're ready to uncover the mysteries that still linger. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think Pope Leo XIV discovered during those 6 weeks? Do you think the Vatican is hiding something? Let's continue the conversation and dive deeper into the secrets the Church has kept from us for centuries, because the truth is out there and together we will find it.